The Grand Council chamber floated like a silver island in the dark, and every seat was filled with alien leaders who spoke in careful voices and cold smiles. They said peace had won. They said war was over. They said diplomacy would guide the galaxy now. A pale minister with glassy eyes raised a soft hand and said that Earth would join them if it learned to be quiet. Some laughed at that, and the laughter looked like a mouthful of sharp coins. In the corner sat the human envoy, a woman with steady eyes and a calm breath. She watched the laughter and did not move. When the chimes rang 3 times, the High Speaker stood and said the vote would begin. The vote was not about who started the last fight. It was about who would set the next rule. The rule was simple: no fleets near the border, no weapons near the trade lanes, no steel where peace must walk. The High Speaker smiled and looked at the human envoy as if the rule was a gift. "We expect your agreement," he said. The envoy only nodded. "I will wait for the last voice," she said. A thin alien prince from the ice worlds smirked and whispered to his neighbor. "Humans talk like they have a blade hidden under polite words." His neighbor clicked back. "They have nothing. We broke their old ships years ago." But the neighbor did not know the shape of human patience. A courier rushed in with a black tablet and placed it before the High Speaker. He read it, his pupils narrowed. Then he raised his head and smiled again. Too fast. "Diplomacy stands," he said, and all sign with joy. The screens around the chamber showed a map of stars and safe zones drawn in gentle blue. They also showed the disputed border like a thin grey scar. The Ice Prince pointed at it and asked, "Will Earth remove its patrol craft from this line?" the envoy said. When others do the same, the hall filled with murmurs. The High Speaker lifted both hands. "We trust the Council's seals will hold all parties, especially Earth," he said. The human envoy folded her hands. "You will have our answer when I finish listening," she said. And then she listened. She listened to the soft lies dressed as peace. She listened to the war chiefs, who now called themselves doves. She listened to a warm speech from a golden queen who said that steel was old and words were the future. The envoy smiled a little and said nothing. A shadow moved at the edge of the hall where a quiet machine hummed. It was the relay that carried signals from the void. Once every hour it sang. This time it sang early. The note cut the air like a needle. The operators went still. One of them swallowed and looked to the High Speaker. "Priority burst," he said, from the border beacon. The chamber dimmed. A tight band of light spilled from the ceiling and wrote a new picture across the air. It was black at first, then stars came into it. Then something else appeared, something that did not shine. A line of shapes, 40, then 60, then more. They were not bright, they were not loud. They were quiet shadows moving with purpose. The Ice Prince leaned forward and his breath fogged. "Whose fleet is that?" he asked, the operator whispered. "Terran signatures." The chamber began to shake with voices. "This is a trick. This is old footage. Why do they bring steel to a peace hall?" The High Speaker lifted his arms again. But his smile was gone. He looked at the human envoy and found her watching him with the same calm eyes. "Would you like to explain this?" he asked. The envoy stood. Her chair whispered across the floor. "I asked for the last voice," she said. "Now I will give it." She took a breath that sounded like wind before rain. "We chose diplomacy first," she said. "But we remember the last treaties signed on broken decks and smoking stations. We remember the trade lanes turned into traps. We remember the promises that came at night and left at dawn." The Golden Queen stood with a cold shine in her eyes. "You bring warships to a peace talk," she said. "That is fear, not faith." The human envoy shook her head. "We bring witnesses," she said. "Steel that does not break when a kind word is pushed with a knife." The Ice Prince laughed. "So Earth threatens us," he said. "How brave to hide behind metal." The envoy looked around the hall. Her voice low and even. "We do not hide," she said. "We stand where everyone can see." Another burst came from the relay. The picture split into smaller windows. In one, human frigates slid like quiet wolves through the dark. In another, automated buoys across the border flashed green. Then one buoy's light turned red, then another. A sigh moved through the chamber as the pattern formed a ring. An elder from the desert worlds whispered, "They are drawing a fence." The High Speaker pressed his palms together until the knuckles went white. "Envoy," he said, "this is a breach. This is a hostile act." The envoy tilted her head. "Not hostile," she said. "Honest." A thick-shouldered general with iron scales slammed his fist on the table. "I will send a test patrol," he growled. "We will see what human steel does when touched." The envoy glanced toward the relay, as if listening to something no one else could hear. Then she looked back. "Do not test the fence," she said. "It is not built to impress. It is built to hold." The iron-scaled general bared his teeth. "Or to trap," he said. The envoy did not answer, and that silence turned the room colder than a window in winter. The Golden Queen lifted her chin. "What do you want?" she asked. "Say it plain." The envoy did not raise her voice, but it reached every ear. "We want true quiet at the border," she said. "We want your scouts pulled back past the old waypoints. We want your merchants to use the marked lanes. We want an end to the soft raids you call misunderstandings." The High Speaker laughed once, short and bitter. "You ask for control and pretend it is calm," he said. "We ask for truth," the envoy replied. "The same truth your own reports carry to this room." Again the relay sang. This time, the picture showed captured data, bursts from the Ice Prince's ships. They showed coordinates and silent jumps. They showed probes slicing close to Earth's trade routes. The Ice Prince sank into his chair, his mouth a thin line of winter. The iron-scaled general snarled. "Even if this is real, we will not bow," he said. "We will send 20 carriers to tear your fence apart." The envoy spread her hands, small and open. "Then bring them," she said, and her voice was still soft. "But first listen to the last voice." The relay chimed once more. The map pulled back. The room seemed to tilt as the scale changed. Beyond the borderline, beyond the human fleet, there were faint shapes, distant, half-hidden. And then the filters cleared and the shapes resolved into old stations, quiet, lightless towns of metal. Ghost platforms left from wars that ended before half the council was born. Human salvage rigs had woken them. Human engines had warmed them. Now they were awake and turning, their long spines pointing like towers toward the dark. The iron-scaled general forgot his anger and just stared. "How long?" he whispered. "Long enough to be ready," the envoy said. The chamber fell into a hush that felt like the inside of a cathedral. The High Speaker sat down, his voice smaller. "If we pull back, if we honor the lanes, if we end the shadow games, will your steel be quiet?" he asked. The envoy looked at the map, at the new ring of watchful stations, at the ships that waited without boasting. "Steel is quiet when it is respected," she said. "Steel only speaks when lies grow loud." The Golden Queen's mouth trembled. Just a little, she nodded once. "We will test honesty," she said. "Not fences." The Ice Prince did not meet anyone's eyes. The iron-scaled general folded his hands and hid his claws. The High Speaker gave a slow breath and struck the chime for a new vote. When the lights turned warm again, the council recorded a fresh pact with clear lines and real costs for breaking them. No one cheered, but something steadier than a cheer moved in the air. A calm that was not weak. The human envoy sat finally, and her chair no longer whispered. The relay fell silent. The fleet out in the dark turned its hulls a little, like soldiers at ease. And for the first time in many seasons, the chamber felt honest. The High Speaker tried to smile and failed, but he did give a small bow across the space between them. "Let steel rest," he said. "Let words work?" The envoy answered with the smallest nod. "Let both stand," she said, and the whole understood that this time peace did not float on empty air. It stood on something solid, and it would not tip so easily. The stars outside the council chamber still burned like frozen fire, but inside the air was tense and heavy. The meeting from earlier had ended with shaky promises, yet no one trusted what had been said. The human envoy had left without raising her voice again, leaving the others to whisper in anger or fear. The High Speaker sat alone for a moment, his hands folded. until the doors slid open and a general from the reptilian worlds entered. His eyes narrow and sharp. "They humiliated us with shadows," he hissed. "You saw their steel lines of warships waiting in silence. They do not believe in peace." The High Speaker rubbed his temples. "Perhaps they only want safety," he muttered. But the general slammed the table. "Safety is a lie. They prepare for war on the other side of the galaxy. Deep in the black beyond the borders, the Terran fleet moved like a tide. The flagship Resolute held the center. Its commander stood tall on the deck, his gaze fixed on the distant markers that represented alien patrols. "Orders?" asked his second, a younger officer with fear hidden behind calm eyes. The commander's voice was steady. "We wait, they must make the first mistake. Until then, our silence is the loudest weapon," the crew obeyed, though the silence itself felt heavy, as if the void listened. Back in the council chamber, a new voice rose. The Golden Queen, who once smiled at peace, now spoke with steel in her tone. "If humans hold their line, what happens when we test it?" Her words spread like smoke, and others caught it. The Ice Prince leaned forward. "A small fleet, a probe, perhaps one strike to see if their steel bends," murmurs filled the hall. The High Speaker lifted his hand. "If we provoke them, we invite fire," he said. But the general snarled, "Better to know their fire now than later." The chamber fell quiet as eyes turned toward the relay, everyone waiting for the next signal from the stars. Hours later, a small alien squadron crossed the border. The captains aboard their ships joked in harsh voices. "Humans bluff," one said. "Their steel is for show," another laughed. "One volley and they will run." But their laughter faded when their sensors picked up shadows. The humans were waiting. The Terran commander stood on the Resolute, his voice steady. "No fire unless they breach again." His officers nodded, though their hands hovered near weapons. The alien ships edged closer, their intent clear. One alien captain grinned as he gave the order. "Fire one shot, nothing more." Just a test. A thin beam of light cut through the dark, brushing against the shields of the nearest human frigate. Silence followed, a silence heavier than war. Then the void answered. The human frigate did not retreat. Instead, its hull opened like a beast, showing its teeth. Railguns hummed, missiles locked. And though no strike came, the message was thunder. The alien crews froze, the laughter gone. The commander's voice carried over comms, calm but cold. "One more shot, and you will not return," the words echoed. And for the first time, the aliens felt something deeper than fear. They felt certainty. The report reached the council within hours. The general roared in fury. "They dared to threaten us." But the Golden Queen whispered, "Or warned us." The Ice Prince slammed his hand on the table. "No, they mock us. We must crush them before they grow bolder." Yet even as he spoke, his voice trembled, for he remembered the shadows, endless lines of steel that moved with patience. The High Speaker sat silent, weighing the truth, his eyes drifting to the envoy's empty chair. Meanwhile, on Earth, the leaders watched the same reports. In quiet chambers beneath mountains, one minister asked, "Will they test us again?" The commander's face appeared on the screen, his eyes steady. "Yes, but when they do, steel will answer." Silence filled the room, not of fear, but of resolve. In the next council meeting, voices clashed like blades. Some demanded war, others begged restraint. But every speech returned to the same image. Terran steel lined against the dark. Unyielding, unshaken, the Golden Queen finally stood. Her voice softer than before. "They chose diplomacy once," she said. "But when tested, they showed us steel. Perhaps that is their truth." The High Speaker lowered his head, for in that moment he knew the balance had shifted. The galaxy no longer looked at Earth as a whisper in the dark. It looked at them as a wall of iron waiting in silence, and the suspense of what might come next gripped every heart in the chamber. The night ended with no final decision. Only heavy silence. Ships still moved at the border. The relay hummed softly, and every alien leader wondered the same question. If humanity chose steel over peace, what would happen when their patience ended? The relay hummed again in the center of the council chamber, its low note slicing through the noise of angry voices. Every leader froze, waiting for the picture to bloom in the air. Light shimmered and then the dark of space appeared. This time the view was close, so close that even the smallest detail could be seen. Human ships stood in formation, their steel hulls lined like a wall. Each one quiet, each one waiting. The High Speaker's throat tightened, he whispered. "They do not move." The Golden Queen leaned forward, her voice softer but laced with unease. "That is more frightening than if they fired." The Ice Prince stood, his cold breath curling in the chamber. "This is nothing," he snapped. "A show of shadows." His words trembled, but he forced them louder. "We will send real carriers and crush this fence they build." He turned to the iron-scaled general. "You agree?" The general's claws tapped on the table, slow and deep. "I agree," he growled, "but I do not underestimate steel that waits." The Golden Queen's eyes narrowed. "If you strike without care, you may wake something worse." At that moment the doors opened. The human envoy walked in. Her steps steady, her face calm. The chamber fell silent. The envoy looked at the floating image of her fleet. She raised her eyes to the council. "You tested us once," she said, her voice even. "Do not test again," the Ice Prince sneered. "Or what?" he asked. "You will strike all of us." She held his gaze without blinking. "If forced, yes," she said. The chamber buzzed with shock. Some hissed, some shouted. But none could hide the chill in their veins. Far away, at the border, the test began. Alien carriers slipped from hyperspace, their hulls glittering with heavy guns. Crews shouted with pride. Captains barked orders. "Show the humans what power is!" Missiles locked onto human frigates. Engines burned bright. The human fleet did not move. Silence stretched until it became unbearable. The alien admiral grinned and ordered, "Fire!" Dozens of missiles streaked through the void. Blazing trails across the stars. They struck the human shields, sparks of light bursting across the surface. And yet when the glow faded, the frigate still stood untouched on the Resolute. The human commander's voice was calm. "Shields hold. Prepare to reply." His officers nodded. Fingers tight on their controls, the commander raised his hand. "One volley," he ordered. Cannons roared. Rail slugs cut through the void like silver knives. The first alien carrier split open, flames spilling into space. The second was crippled with a single shot. Silence filled the alien channels. Fear grew where pride once burned. Back in the chamber, the relay showed the destruction in real time. Gasps echoed. The Golden Queen's hand covered her mouth. The iron-scaled general's claws clenched the table. The Ice Prince stumbled back. "Impossible!" he whispered. "One volley only." The envoy's voice cut the quiet. "We warned you," she said. "Now you see what happens when words are ignored." The High Speaker rose, his face pale. "Enough!" he shouted. "No more tests. No more fire." His voice cracked but carried weight. The chamber slowly calmed, though fear still clung to every breath. But then the relay sang again, sharper this time. The picture shifted. It showed more human ships emerging from the dark. Battleships older than myths, carriers so large they blotted the stars. Even the envoy's face stayed calm, as if she expected this. The council gasped as one. The Golden Queen whispered, "How many fleets do they hide?" The envoy answered. "Enough to guard Earth, enough to keep liars honest." The Ice Prince, trembling, tried one last push. "You threaten all of us with annihilation," he said. "No," the envoy replied. "We remind you that peace has teeth." Her words hung in the chamber like a blade. No one spoke for long moments. The iron-scaled general finally lowered his eyes. His pride broken. "Perhaps steel is not just for war," he said. "Perhaps it is for truth." The Golden Queen nodded slowly. "Perhaps," she whispered. The High Speaker looked at the envoy, his voice heavy. "What do you demand?" The envoy's answer was quiet but firm. "Respect the borders. Honor the trade lanes, end the shadow raids, or face the steel you have seen." She turned, her eyes meeting every leader in turn. "Choose wisely," she said. When she left the chamber, silence followed her like a shadow. Outside, the stars burned the same, but to every leader watching, they no longer looked safe. They looked sharp, like blades pointed at them. In that silence, one truth echoed through the galaxy. The humans had come with diplomacy first. But when tested, their steel had spoken, and it had spoken loud. The chamber lights dimmed as the council sat in silence. No one spoke, no one laughed. Even the Ice Prince, who once mocked humanity, now kept his head lowered. The High Speaker looked older than before. His voice cracked as he said, "We are standing at the edge of something we do not control." The Golden Queen folded her hands, her eyes sharp. "Then we must control it before it grows," she whispered. The Iron Scale General shook his head. "Control is gone. Humans do not ask permission. They simply build walls of steel and dare us to cross." The human envoy stepped forward again. Calm as before, her gaze steady. "We gave you a choice," she said. "Peace or provocation, you chose to test. And you saw the answer." The Ice Prince's voice finally broke the silence. It was thin and bitter. "You humiliated us," he said. "And yet you call it peace." The envoy did not blink. "We call it survival," she answered. From the relay came another signal. The chamber froze. The image bloomed across the air. But this time it was not the border. It was deeper, near the old war graveyards, where wrecks of ancient ships drifted. The picture showed human salvage crews pulling forgotten hulks from the void. Fusing old alien designs with Terran steel, the Golden Queen leaned forward, her voice trembling. "They are building more." The High Speaker's chest tightened. "Not fleets," he whispered, "fortresses. On the Resolute." The human commander stood with his officers, his face hard. "The Council is watching," said his second. "They see what we prepared." The commander nodded. "Let them," he said. "We hid nothing, only waited for the moment when shadows would mean something." His voice carried steady authority, and the crew felt both fear and pride. Back in the chamber, the iron-scaled general growled, "They are weaponizing history itself." His claws dug into the table. "The wrecks of our fathers now serve them." The envoy's voice cut through, cold and sharp. "We build from what you abandoned. You left these bones in the dark. We gave them purpose again." The Golden Queen's eyes widened. "You turn ghosts into gods," she said. "You make silence into soldiers." The envoy tilted her head. "Steel does not forget." The Ice Prince rose, his body shaking. "If you think we will bow, you are wrong. We will gather every fleet and shatter these fortresses." His words were bold, but his tone was not. The envoy studied him for a long moment, then said, "Try, and see how long your courage lasts." The chamber fell into whispers, fear threading through every corner. Suddenly the relay pulsed brighter, an urgent burst of light. Operators scrambled, their voices tight. "Unscheduled transmission," one cried. The image shifted, showing the border again. But now alien raiders, small ships with no banners, were striking at Terran patrol lines. Fast and reckless, the Ice Prince's face drained of color. The Golden Queen's voice cut sharp. "Are these yours?" she demanded. The prince shook his head. "Not mine. Not sanctioned." The iron-scaled general slammed the table. "Rogue bands, but their actions will bring fire on us all." The envoy watched in silence as the image showed the attack. Terran ships endured the assault, shields holding against wave after wave. Finally, the Resolute gave a single command. Human ships spread out like a net. The raiders were trapped. One by one they were disabled, but none destroyed. The aliens in the chamber frowned. The High Speaker whispered, "They spared them." The envoy's eyes flicked to him. "We do not kill for sport, but do not mistake mercy for weakness." The Golden Queen exhaled slowly, her voice lower. "Perhaps we are not facing conquerors," she said, "but guardians." The iron-scaled general stared at the envoy. "Guardians with teeth sharper than warlords." The envoy's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Better guardians than ghosts," she said. The High Speaker leaned forward, his voice weary but stronger than before. "If we accept your terms, will this steel rest? Will the fortresses sleep? Will the fleet stand down?" he asked. The envoy answered without hesitation, "Yes, as long as your words match your actions." The chamber fell silent again. But this silence was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of a choice hanging in the air. The Golden Queen finally rose, her voice carrying across the hall. "Then let us end the shadow games. Let us honor what was spoken." The iron-scaled general followed with a heavy nod. Even the Ice Prince bowed his head, bitter but beaten. The High Speaker struck the chime. The sound rolled through the chamber. A new pact was sealed, clear and binding, this time with no hollow promises. As the lights brightened again, the council members looked at one another, their faces pale but resolved. When the envoy left the chamber, she walked steady, her shadow long against the wall. Outside, the stars still burned. The human fleet still waited. But for the first time in years, the galaxy did not see Earth as weak or desperate. They saw a guardian wrapped in steel, a quiet force that had chosen diplomacy first, but never forgotten how to fight. And as the story of that day spread, a truth grew in every corner of the stars. Peace could stand, but only because human steel stood behind it. Across 100 worlds, the news moved like a cold wind, showing the same images again and again. Human ships standing like a wall, raiders trapped without a kill, fortresses waking among the old wrecks. Market screens froze mid-trade, classrooms fell quiet. Soldiers in distant garrisons stopped cleaning their rifles and stared. In the council chamber, the High Speaker tried to hold the room together with calm words, but even his voice shook a little. "We chose the pact," he said. "We will honor it," the Golden Queen answered in a careful tone. "Promises are easy, but fear is faster." The iron-scaled general looked at the relay and rubbed the edge of the table with his claws. "Fear is already here," he muttered. On the Ice Prince's homeworld, crowds gathered under pale suns. Whispers became shouts. Some demanded war. Others begged for peace. A thin minister raised his hands. "We will not bow to Terran steel," he cried. But a woman in the crowd shouted back, "We will not die for your pride." The argument cut the street in half, and by nightfall, soldiers had sealed the square, none of them eager to fire, all of them afraid that a single mistake would call the human fleet down from the stars. At the border, the flagship Resolute held steady. The human commander stood at the wide window and watched faint lights drift along the fence line. "Update," he said, his second step close. "Raider traffic has dropped. Official fleets keep their distance. But there are new signals behind the lines. Lots of chatter, lots of fear." The commander nodded once. "Fear can start fires," he said, "and bad men like fires." The second frowned. "Do we warn the council?" The commander kept his eyes on the dark. "We warn them when warning helps," he said. "We move now because moving helps." Hours later, a small colony world near the old wreck fields blinked a silent distress. The pulse was faint, an old beacon, cheap and stubborn, not on any main registry. The bridge crew leaned forward. The second spoke first. "Not one of ours, not one of theirs, just people." The commander's answer was quick. "Plot a jump, 3 frigates, 1 cutter for evac. Tell the council we are responding to a civilian call." The message sent. The jump prepared. The commander added one more line. "We will not cross a treaty lane, but we will not let a colony burn." On the colony, night covered the iron plains. A boy stared at a sky with too many stars and asked his mother, "Are they coming?" She held him tight and lied with love. "Help always comes." Raider ships howled over the hills, shooting at power towers, shooting at empty barns, making fear louder than sense. The mayor called anyone who would listen. "We are farmers. We have nothing worth stealing." A raider voice laughed. "You have fear, and fear sells." When the human ships fell from the dark, the ground lit up. The raiders turned their guns on the sky. The Resolute did not jump in. The commander had sent the smaller ships, faster, lighter, able to land. The cutter dropped first, doors open, lights bright like a promise. "Civilians to the plaza," the pilot shouted on open channel. "This is a humanitarian extraction. Do not fire on the evac routes." A raider leader snarled into his mic. "Fire anyway," but half his crews hesitated. Everyone had seen the footage from the border. Everyone knew that steel spoke last and loud. In the council chamber, the relay painted the story in sharp lines. The Ice Prince's face was all edges. "They are using rescue to move troops," he said. The Golden Queen turned. "They brought an evac cutter, not a war column." The iron-scaled general stared with a hard, troubled gaze, but an evac can become a foothold, the human envoy, standing near the wall, spoke at last. It will become a memory, a true one. While you argue, people are screaming. The high speaker swallowed and motioned to the operators. Patch a message, he said, his voice tired. Authorize limited assistance, honor the lanes, keep the pact. He looked at the envoy. If your commander crosses the line, you will answer to this chamber. The envoy's answer was simple. He will cross only into danger, not into your pride. On the colony, the first twist came fast. A raider wave went silent mid-run. Their engines cut, their hulls drifting. The human frigate had not fired. Instead, it pushed a wide burst. A clean pulse tuned to knock out stolen drives without lighting the sky on fire. The raiders stumbled in shock. They took our teeth, one pilot cried. The cutter landed in the plaza. Marines in plain armor formed a ring. Voices calm. Families inside, keep moving. Leave heavy bags, a farmer argued. Those are our tools. A Marine woman put a hand on the crate and met his eyes. Your life is the only tool that matters now. He nodded. Tears hot and let go. A second twist followed. The raiders were not the only threat. A ground cell tied to a secret faction inside the council had planted charges near the water plants, hoping to blame the humans for damage and restart the war. A small girl saw wires where no wire should be and tugged on her mother's sleeve. That box is wrong, she whispered. The mother told a volunteer. The volunteer told a Marine. The Marine called the frigate. The human second breathed fast. Saboteurs on the ground. This is a frame. The commander's reply was ice. Then we end it clean, he said. The Resolute sent a thin drone, a quiet silver needle. It slipped across the night and froze the trigger signal. Marines found the charges and carried them into a crater, away from the town. The girl watched the careful hands and asked, "Are we safe now?" The Marine woman bent to her height. "Safer than a minute ago," she said. A third twist cracked the sky. A heavy cruiser with no colors dropped from hyperspace just outside the legal lane. Its captain broadcast on wide band, "Leave the colonists, leave the wreck fields, leave the border, or we turn this ground to glass." His voice was drunk with fake courage. In the chamber, the Ice Prince flinched, then glared. "Not mine," he said too quickly. The Golden Queen looked sick with anger. "They want to make humans answer with fire," she said. The envoy stared at the cruiser's outline. "They want a story made of ashes," she murmured. On the Resolute, the commander looked at the outline too. His second whispered, "Orders." The commander's voice was calm as dawn. "Talk first," he said. He opened a channel. "Unmarked cruiser. You are outside treaty lanes and threatening civilians. Power down and identify." The cruiser laughed. "We identify as your problem." The commander gave a small, weary sigh. "Then hear the last voice," he said. The human frigates shifted. One rose in the dark above the cruiser. Railgun caps slid open, soft as a breath. The commander spoke again. "If you fire, you will not fire twice." For a moment the night held still. Then the cruiser tried one shot, a bright line toward the evac plaza. The frigate above answered. One slug, one strike, no flames. Just the soundless shatter of a gun deck turned to dust. The cruiser went dead in the water, engines cut by the same clean pulse that had stopped the raiders. In the chamber, the high speaker closed his eyes. "No civilian deaths," he said, relief so heavy it almost broke him. The Iron Scale General nodded once hard. The Ice Prince said nothing and wished he had stayed silent all week. The Golden Queen turned to the envoy. "You saved them without burning the sky." The envoy's voice was low. "That is the point," she said. "Peace with teeth is still peace." On the colony, the last buses rolled into the cutter. The mayor took one final look at his town. "We will come back," he said. "After the traps are cleared." The Marine woman saluted with 2 fingers. "We will keep the lane clean until you do." When the cutter lifted off, children pressed their faces to the windows, watching the silent human ships hang like patient guardians. The boy who had asked about help whispered, "They came." His mother kissed his hair. "They came," she said, and the word felt like shelter. By dawn, the raiders were bound, the charges were safe. The unmarked cruiser was drifting under tow. The human fleet did not move to occupy. They only watched and then they left. The Resolute sent one last message to the colony. "We will answer your beacon again," and one last message to the Council. We kept the lanes. In the chamber, the High Speaker read the words and finally smiled. "Small and honest, then the pact still lives," he said. The envoy inclined her head. "It lives because it is guarded," she answered. Across the galaxy, fear did not vanish, but it changed shape. It grew respect and put on a quieter face. Markets began to move. Schools reopened. Soldiers returned to drills without the taste of panic. And in private rooms, the leaders who once sneered at Earth now spoke in softer tones. "If this is human steel," the Golden Queen said to her advisors, "then perhaps we should use our words as carefully as they use their weapons." Outside the windows, the stars did not look like knives anymore. They looked like distant lamps over a road that might actually be safe, at least for a while, and that was enough to let a breath out, enough to make the next day possible, enough to make the galaxy wonder what kind of peace could grow when even steel chose to stand still. The council chamber was quieter than it had been in decades, but the silence was not peace, it was tension. The kind that made every word feel sharp. The High Speaker sat heavy in his chair, his voice low. "The pact is signed, the borders are drawn, yet whispers of rebellion still grow." The Golden Queen leaned forward, her tone cool and careful. "Fear has not ended. It has only changed shape." The iron-scaled general tapped the table with one claw. "And fear with teeth is worse than war." The human envoy stood at the far end of the hall, calm as always, her eyes never wavering. "You speak of whispers," she said. "We hear them too, raiders regrouping. Smugglers carrying weapons, secret factions hoping for chaos. They believe fear will drive you to break your promises." The Ice Prince, pale from shame, snapped. "You claim to know more than our own spies," the envoy answered simply. "Because we listen where you do not." Her words left the chamber unsettled. Beyond the council walls, the galaxy churned. On distant mining moons, crews refused to work. On trade routes, captains whispered that Terran steel would either save them or doom them. On the border, the Resolute kept watch, its commander speaking softly to his second. "The council pretends they hold the leash," he said. "But they only hold their breath," the officer frowned. "And when they exhale," the commander's eyes stayed on the dark. "We see who breathes smoke." A new signal burst through the relay. Sharp, urgent, it showed a council convoy under attack. Transports burning near the treaty lanes. The Golden Queen rose. "That is one of mine," she cried. The chamber filled with shouts. The iron-scaled general demanded warships at once. The Ice Prince hissed. "This is Terran trickery," but the envoy stepped forward, her voice unshaken. "Our ships are still at the fence. You know this," the operators confirmed. "The Terran fleet has not moved." The image shifted, showing the raiders, their ships painted black. Their codes scrambled, but one mistake betrayed them. A small emblem burned on a stolen hull. The iron-scaled general froze when he saw it. His claws stilled. The Golden Queen's eyes narrowed. "That is your warband's mark," she said coldly. The general growled, "Rogue deserters." But the envoy cut him off. "Deserters with your weapons. Deserters who knew your codes," the chamber erupted. At the same moment on the border, the commander of the Resolute received a direct order from Earth. His console flashed with a message: "Intervene only if the Council requests it." His second read the line aloud. "What if they ask too late?" he asked. The commander's gaze was steel. "Then we act anyway because we answer distress, not delay." The battle near the convoy turned savage. Raiders ripping at transports, civilians screaming across open channels. The Golden Queen shouted in the chamber, "Send the humans!" The iron-scaled general roared back, "Never! They will claim our trade lines." The High Speaker slammed his staff. "Enough," he shouted, his voice breaking. "Do you value pride more than lives?" Silence fell. Every eye turned to him. Finally he said the words that changed everything. "Send the humans." The envoy gave no smile, no triumph, only a nod. "The fleet will answer," she said. On the Resolute, the commander heard the order. "Full burn," he commanded. The Terran ships surged forward. Leaving the fence for the first time, missiles locked, shields flared. The raiders laughed at first. "Too late," one jeered. But the laughter died when the first volley cut their leader's ship in half. The Golden Queen whispered as she watched the relay. "They do not waste fire." Indeed, the humans struck with precision, disabling engines, cracking guns, leaving life pods drifting but intact. In less than 10 minutes, the convoy was safe. The raiders bound, the void quiet again. The commander opened a channel to the council. Civilians secure, hostiles disabled, treaty lanes respected. Then he cut the line. Back in the chamber, the Ice Prince whispered, "They saved us." The iron-scaled general stared at the envoy with something between hate and respect. "They shamed us again," he said. The envoy looked at him steadily. "We do not seek shame, we seek survival. Yours as much as ours." The High Speaker leaned back, exhausted. Perhaps survival is the only truth left, but another twist followed. The operators reported intercepted messages from the raiders' wrecks, codes linking them to a secret faction within the council itself. The chamber shook with outrage. The Golden Queen hissed, "Traitors among us." The envoy's voice was cold. "Now you see why we guard the border." The iron-scaled general lowered his head. Knowing suspicion would fall on him, the High Speaker struck the chime once, his voice heavy. "The pact stands, but the hunt begins within." The meeting ended with no cheers, only the heavy knowledge that enemies were not only outside the stars, but seated at their own tables. The envoy left the chamber, her steps echoing. Outside, the fleet of Terran steel drifted like a shadow. Patient, silent, unstoppable, the galaxy now knew two truths. Humanity would not strike first, but when they did, there was no force that could stop them. And as those truths spread, fear grew softer, replaced by something sharper, respect.